Can you fix a crack in a plastic canoe or a plastic kayak? The answer is, it depends. Mostly, it depends on the kind of plastic, and a little bit it depends on how bad the crack is. So, this boat, I broke it on a river when they shut off the current on me. There's a dam upstream. They turned off the dam as I was going down, and it just uncovered all the rocks, and I was bump, 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 bump. I couldn't take off the river because it's inside a deep canyon, and without doing a massively dangerous free climb while pulling a canoe, I had to continue. So I ended up breaking the boat and putting a couple of good cracks into it right underneath the saddle. Now fortunately, this is in a ski ledge, and that means it's polyethylene. It's a linear polyethylene, which is relatively easy to fix with a technique called plastic welding. In plastic welding, you take a crack, and you often put a hole at either end of the crack, like you drill it out, just like you would in woodworking, to stop the propagation of that crack. Then on one side, you kind of gouge out the crack, and you fill it with essentially a plastic putty, and use a heat gun to melt it, so it just melts and forms a bond. Then you do the same on the other side, and now you've got your broken layer of plastic sandwiched by two new layers of plastic. So linear polyethylene is fairly easy to plastic weld. Cross-linked polyethylene, which is a different kind of plastic that they sometimes make boats out of, is much, much harder, basically impossible to plastic weld. Other types of plastic like Royalex, which isn't made anymore, but there's still a lot of Royalex boats out there. Again, a total mess if you try to repair it, especially with plastic welding. So if you've got a broken boat, call the manufacturer and ask them if it can be plastic welded. Now, who does the plastic welding? So in my case, I went to a shop out in the countryside that builds a lot of septic tanks and other materials made of plastic, and they do repairs on agricultural equipment and totes and whatnot. So they're very experienced with plastic welding. It's 150 bucks, and hopefully it'll give me another couple of years of use out of this boat. So number one, call the manufacturer. Number two, find a plastic welding facility. Now, to fix this boat, I had to remove the airbags, and of course the crack was right underneath the saddle. So I had to remove the saddle. That was a pain in the butt, because it's glued in there with contact cement. So first I had to undo the thwart, and then I had to scrape with a spatula and a chisel coming right underneath here to separate the saddle from the material at the bottom. Here you can see the welding. It doesn't look that great, but you didn't buy your boat for aesthetic purposes. You bought it to go down rivers, so I don't care. You can see they've repaired it here. And on the underside, they've also repaired it here. There were actually two cracks. The darker white, or the whiter white, is where they've gouged out the plastic a bit to fill it with a filler and then melt it, and then they put a layer on top. So my next step is I've got to reassemble the boat. I've got to reinsert the saddle, glue that in again, reattach all the thwarts, redo all the string. That'll take another half hour or an hour. But then I'll have a boat, and hopefully I can head back to the river and try and break it again.